Good afternoon. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. It's just after 1 p.m. And we have with us today, this afternoon, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So welcome. We've been here before, so you know who we are. We have a new vice chair, Marty, Representative Feltus. We've met, so great.
So for the record, I'm Lindsay Curley. I'm the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And I'm here today with our team to present our FY27 recommended budget. So sitting with me is, you want to introduce yourself again?
Dan Dickerson, ACCD Director of Administrative Services.
And throughout our presentation, we'll bring Commissioners Jepson, Farrell, and Pelham up as appropriate, talk about certain departments. So I just wanted to do a little table setting. Our agency, as most of you know, are engaged in activities to help employers and entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses here in Vermont. We help with a variety of things like navigation services, site location, workforce, you name it. We just help our businesses grow and succeed here. We promote our state for both visitors as well as people who might want to come live here. And we through our services and programs, we support communities and helping making them more vibrant and safe. We do this with the help of around 100 staff members in our agency. We are small, but we are mighty. And everything we do is with the intention of generating revenue for our state. So we generate income, and our budget that we're about to propose is a total of $74.2 million. And the increase in the general fund runs just slightly north of 3%. And we can talk about what's in there. We had aimed for 3%. But also on top of that, we are asking for $4 million to be added to our base budget so that we may continue the very successful VHIP program. And so we'll talk about that. Commissioner Farrell will talk more about that. And then we have a couple one-time expenditures that we are asking for. And one is $800,000 that for the Manufactured Home Improvement Repair Program. And that is a program that's been very successful in keeping vulnerable Vermonters housed. And again, Commissioner Farrell will talk more about that. And then from Commissioner Jepson, you'll hear about the $150,000 proposal to continue our import, export, and trade relations going. We have an office or a consultant in Montreal that works with us to help us recruit businesses who are interested in coming to the U.S. and specifically Vermont. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I didn't bring any notes, so let me think. I think at this point, I can.
It sounds familiar to me.
I think at this point, I can just hand it over to Dan to take you through more detail of the budget.
All right, good afternoon, committee. I guess before I dive into the details, I do want to spend a few minutes just sort of at a high level setting the table, basically going from this slide in your book where it shows those new initiatives. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about.
So this is the cover?
Yeah.
We have a couple of things.
Oh, yeah. There's a bigger budget book.
We have the big budget.
Yeah. And actually, I'll step back. So we have a slideshow. I think that's going to serve as the basis of the discussion today. There is a more detailed budget book that is available as a resource for you. If folks look through it during the testimony and have questions, I'm happy to jump into that.
Can you share your screen for this presentation?
Oh, I cannot. I didn't bring my laptop.
I can do that.
Okay, awesome.
I'm used
I have
to
mine too.
folks having things electronic.
I just need
You need to start.
Yeah, start and then we'll just get this set up. And then I think you'll just need hosting authority, whoever's.
And I think Secretary Curley will need this.
Yeah,
Okay.
email.
Okay, so why don't you start and then we'll just join.
So in one of the slides in the slideshow we provided, there's a pie chart that basically shows the breakout of funds that we're seeking spending authority to use over the course of the year. I want to start telling a story around the federal funds. If you look on that, the federal fund share is about 43% of our overall budget. Although I do want to note that a big chunk of that is made up of community development block grant disaster recovery dollars. So we're seeking about 20 million of spending authority to issue grants and then support staff who are working on that initiative. And so without those funds, the federal share would be about 23%. Looking back to 26, that federal share was about 32% without CDBG-DR. 25, that was about 46%. So just over the 2-year period, and there's some nuance there, but I do want to tell the story of the federal funds that we have relied heavily on to do a lot of really good things are going away. And so that certainly creates pressures for us to where we see that there are important initiatives that we want to continue, try to find other funding to support that.
So, but you just said the federal funds increased over last year, but that's in the CBG.
Really
Do you
do.
actually have the money?
We don't have the money in hand. It's a reimbursement base. So
Okay.
we
You've
submit,
been approved.
we submit federal draws, but yes, we have an approved granting plan. And we have submitted, I think to date, 2 or 3 draws, and we've actually gotten money back. So that's pretty cool.
Not everybody does.
There was a little bit of stress during the big government shutdown, but once that ended, things have flowed smoothly.
Maybe it's a more of a philosophical question, but on time, like 2024, up till 2024, you would make applications to CDBG and they would be approved or not approved at the federal level. But once they were approved, you rest assured that they would show up on time. And from what you just said, it sounds like to me that you apply for CDBG grants from the federal government, they approve them, and then you sit there with your fingers and toes crossed, wondering and worrying whether or not they're actually going to send it to you. Is that like a daily thing now?
No, it's not a daily thing. I do want to, I want to create some separation between the CDBG-DR, which is a special appropriation from the federal government, and our normal CDBG program. And that has continued, and we haven't had issues with that. I guess I can dive right into a little bit of the federal dynamic. The government or the president's budget did propose eliminating a few programs, but in the bill that passed Congress, those programs, at least that would have impacted ACCD, are funded. Now, does that mean that there may or may not be complications between passage of the bill and us actually getting the dollars awarded? Maybe.
We've heard that from several agencies already where they're waiting for money for at least some of them for 8, 9, 10 months.
Yeah, we've not had those issues. There was a delay during the shutdown, but I think that was across the board just because there was no staffing at the time. But, other than that, by and large, we've continued to have a good working relationship with our federal partners at HUD that manage the CDBG, the folks at EPA that manage brownfields. So we've continued receiving the federal funds. I mean, they've been flat, and that's a part of the story here. But those programs have continued. I don't know if that.
Oh, that's fine. I can't imagine, we live a life in this building where, when people come in and they say, we really want some stability here. We really want to make sure that things are, well, we all want stability. And I would imagine you do as well when you are working to try to get these funds for Vermonters. And if they don't come, or if they don't come when they're supposed to, what does that do to your business model? What does that do to your day-to-day personal, job-oriented stress levels? And in terms of what programs get affected if there's a delay in federal funding? And to me, that's chaotic, and chaotic is not stability.
Yeah, certainly at the beginning of 25, and I think when we were in here back in February of 2025, there was a little bit of that uncertainty just because of, when you could read the news and for a lot of different things. Since then, at least for ACCD, and I can't necessarily speak for other agencies, things have continued to go, and we've been okay. And we're very thankful that the CDBG-DR money came through and we've now been able to deploy that. So, I mean, certainly the rug could get pulled out, but as of right now, based on what we've experienced, things have continued moving. So we'll continue running the programs.
Great. Lynn?
Yeah, can you define those two CDBG programs, CDBGR and regular CDBG? What are they? And what-
Yes, so the regular CDBG program, that's a long-standing program where HUD basically issues block grants to different states, to all 50 states plus territories, to issue grant awards to municipalities for community development initiatives. So that program has, like I said, been a longstanding program, and it has continued and was funded. That was one of the programs that the president had proposed doing away with in his budget blueprint. Congress funded the program. So we hope and anticipate that the funds will flow through eventually. So that's about, I think it's about 8 million a year that we get roughly, for mostly grants and a little bit of admin. The CDBG disaster recovery is tied specifically to the 2023 floods, and was a completely separate appropriation made by Congress to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, to provide to the state of Vermont. We've gotten that award, and
Is that money going there?
it's not gone. We issued about 50 million in grant awards, and we're working through the actual agreements, but we authorized about 50 million of grant awards last fall. And then I think the anticipation is we'll issue about another 20 million of grant awards this spring. Spending authority we have in the 27 budget is really for those grant awards that will be issued this spring. We anticipate that the actual grant agreements creating the obligations won't be finalized until FY27.
So to follow up on Lynn's question, this is only for the 23 floods.
I think, yes. I don't know that, maybe Commissioner Farrell could clarify. I don't know that anything from 24 got wrapped up in
25.
or 25.
So we
I think
have,
it's really
so
just.
we have, Vermont got denied the second time, as you know, for FEMA and for certain towns. And I'm just wondering if any of this money could be used to help. Not appropriate. I don't know how it works.
Just the record, just.
Sure, yeah, okay. For the record, Alex Farrell, Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development. So the justification for the appropriation was based on damage from the 23 floods. And so that is how we use data to establish the areas that HUD approved for us to award grants. And then we essentially got to broaden based on, again, some data justifications in other areas where we award grants. That's based on the 23 floods. However, we weren't only making awards based on that damage from 23. So as long as areas were included in that geographic constraint, we could make awards based on the 24, 25 data.
Go ahead, Barb.
I guess I'm confused, and if it fit in a geographic area, you could still apply some of those funds to 24 and 25 damages.
Yeah, the geographic area is set by county.
Right.
And so, if you fell in one of those counties that were approved by HUD, then yes, you could apply. There still had to be some, you had to demonstrate some nexus. There's quite a bit of leeway to demonstrate that nexus. For example, housing development, a municipality or a county that has lost housing stock, that could be the nexus to the 23 funds, even if the damage you're trying to accommodate was actually from 24 or 25.
Well, maybe I'll speak to you separately.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about road construction and damage.
Is going to be used for that, or is that another thing?
So infrastructure was absolutely allowable in use, and there were substantial infrastructure awards. So infrastructure, housing, and then mitigation were the primary buckets. The bulk of the funding went to housing, which also included infrastructure to support housing. So again, pretty broad bucket, but I want to say 15 million went to just infrastructure aside from housing. We can come back with a specific CDBG DR presentation.
I don't know if we need it, but you can talk to Rafael, and yeah, and then we'll see if we need to go from there as a whole committee or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great, okay, thanks.
Any other,
Wait, one more question, sorry.
Just to make sure my mind's straight for you, because I see this sheet, other sheet, that's ARPA funds number. We're talking FEMA funds versus ARPA funds. Got funds, two different flows of federal money coming through.
well, actually, you're getting into a third different flow of federal money. So there's the
It's not part of
CDBG,
your-
CDBGDR.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
Why don't we pause on that one until we get, this is,
So going back to the pie chart and back to the federal funding piece, I just want to get back to emphasize the message that yes, our federal fund share is strong, although most of that's driven by the CDBGDR award. Below that, while I do maintain that confidence that the federal funds that have supported the mission at ACCD will continue, those federal funds have been flat, which has created pressure on the general fund appropriations that we receive. But in order to be responsible stewards of state dollars, as Secretary Curley noted, we, aside from the extra money we're asking for VHIP, we maintained our general fund budget with only a 3.5% growth. So we try to be as responsible as we can while also, continuing to support, the federal programs and continue to support our state programs. Which is just a testament to the great staff that we have at the agency and the thought and care that goes into building the budget and being as responsible as we can. So with that, unless there are questions on this slide, I'll move to, I'll skip ahead and talk about, oh, yes.
talk about where the special funds came from.
Yes, I can talk about special funds.
High level is great, but what are your special funds?
Yes, so a few primary sources and then a few smaller ones that I won't speak to. So the primary sources, the big one is we get a piece of the property transfer tax revenues that goes to the municipal regional planning fund. And we send those funds directly out to municipalities with our municipal planning grants, and then to the regional planning commissions through their annual operating grants.
Yep.
So that's most of that money. I want to say it's in the 9 or 10 million range.
Yeah.
And then at a smaller scale, and something that I'll speak to in more detail as we get into DED, because I think there's a piece of that you may hear from finance and management about that needs to change. A few years ago, we had gotten a one-time appropriation for a rural industrial development initiative. It was about $5 million. A piece of the appropriation language indicated that if properties that receive funding through this are subsequently sold, those funds need to be paid back to the state, along with potentially some of the, if there's a gain that comes from that, some of that gain as well. And so what we had then planned to do internally is, okay, if we get money back, we'll try to reissue and get as much, continue to get the money out the door. And so we had the FY26 construct had about 2.5 million of spending authority, no funds to back that up. It's spending authority so that in the event that if funds came back, we could push them back out the door. As it turns out, that construct doesn't work just because of the nature of the fund that the appropriation was made from. So that 2.5 million, I think, will end up falling out of the budget. And I think you'll probably hear from finance management on that. So the RPC muni funds, and then this fund, that's most of the special fund dollars. We do have this historic sites operating fund. We do receive some money from the captive insurance supervisory fund. And then a few smaller funds where if we get, if sometimes DHCD staff have like little conferences where there's a registration fee, and we'll bring that fee in and then use it to fund the conference. But those are really and then there's a piece of transportation fund that I'll get into in more detail when we get into DHCD. So with that, I will move to the administration division. And so I'll go into detail on this budget. The division is made up of the secretary, deputy secretary, support staff for them, and then the finance administration and contracting and grants staff, that's the rest of the agency. So in FY 27, that's 15 positions. I know we'd gotten a question yesterday on vacancies, so I'll just note at this point, we do have one vacancy, one exempt position is unfilled, and we're working to get that filled in a timely manner. And then also we also currently have 2 limited service positions that are helping to support the spend down of those ARPA dollars, so that we can
And then what happens when the money's gone? Because that's
those
done by December.
we have a large number of limited service positions that expire at the end of December. So
So that's built into the budget then. Okay, thanks.
so I'll dive into the wonderful ups and downs document that
I
I,
don't need a lot of detail about
Okay.
it. If anything really big and different in it that.
as far
It's
as,
pretty standard stuff.
as far as admin is concerned, it is pretty standard. The only change, I'll focus on the grants. We had received a request from the UVM Census Data Center for some additional funding in their the pass-through grant that we give them. So currently, as of FY 26, we give them a $50,000 annual grant. Looking back to 2020, which was the last time it was adjusted, using that inflationary factor, I calculated that they were due for about a $10,000 increase. So that's what we were able to build in. So they would now be at 60,000 in FY 27.
Mike, you had a question.
Just to backtrack a little, those positions that you're gonna lose, how is that gonna affect fulfilling your mission?
Those positions were created to implement and carry out the programs that the legislature authorized when we got the ARPA money. And so some of those positions have, like VHIP, for example, that program has transitioned to a state-funded program.
Especially what I was asking for, because you got a guy over there that's doing some great work.
Yes.
So
And we want to make sure he can keep doing that great work.
the hope is that if we receive the 4 million of base funding, that we would carve out a piece of that and use it for staffing. And so we would go to the pool, the position pool, and try to get 2 positions to support that program. So that's our hope. Same with the manufactured home improvement and repair program. That was off. We received base funding in FY 26. And so we went to the pool this fall and received a position that we finally have in place that we can recruit for. But the other positions have supported programs that when the money's gone, the programs will end. So positions would have to go.
If I might, I really appreciate you raising that, because that is, we've been grateful for the one-time money in VHIP, but it is really hard to have continuity in your staff when people think they need to be looking for a different job. So this program has proven, and Commissioner Farrell will talk more about it, but I just, want to acknowledge how important it is to us to keep this team and to keep this program going. So
Agreed.
thank you.
That's really it for the admin budget. So if you don't have questions, I think onto the ED is next on the agenda. So
Commissioner Jepson, and I'm not sure you all know each other, so he'll do introductions, but now you're in charge of,
I'm pushing the button.
one of you is.
Fire, I can take it.
Just watch the, because I'm sure that doesn't pass the safety.
I'm going to introduce myself.
Well, I
Oh.
You meet again. We
Again?
worked together when we were both RDC directors, so we go way back. So
Too far back.
then we'd like to think. I think. So, why don't we introduce ourselves, because you have not met us all before.
Lyle Jepson, Commissioner for Economic Development, was an RDC director prior to this position in the Rutland region. Prior to that, an educator for I won't tell you how long. So, and primarily in technical education, which brings me to a lot of the work that's going on right here, which is exciting work. So
So we'll introduce ourselves to you as well, so you can meet the committee.
Wonderful.
Welcome, I'm Dave Iacovoni from Morrisville. I represent the Lamoille, Washington District, 5 towns.
I got a B. So John Sensker from Burke, I represent the Essex Caledonia District and 10 towns.
He wins.
Mike Nigro, I represent Bennington and Powell.
Born in Bennington.
What's that?
Was born in Bennington.
Tom Stevens from Waterbury, representing the Washington and Shaken District.
Marty Phelps is from Linden. I represent Linden and 4 other towns.
Robin Shai from Middlebury, Middlebury.
Tiff Blumley, formerly of Vermont Works for Women. We worked together when you were in technical education. I'm now represent Burlington.
Trevor Swirl, I represent Hundred Hill and Jericho.
Wayne Rush, Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, and Richmond.
I am Mike Lowicki in the Linden 4 District, Putney and Dummerston.
Hi, I'm Lynn Dickinson. I represent St. Albans Town.
It's wonderful to meet you all. Thank you very much. They said I had 3 hours, so I'll start there. You'll see staff on the board there, 21 staff. Of those, I'm glad we're talking about limited service positions. 4 of those staff members are limited service positions. Now I'll entertain the question, what will happen when they leave? Thank you very much. That was a great question. One of those we're hoping to transfer into our CHIP program. I know you've heard about that. We'll talk just briefly about it in the notes here. We will need to staff up in order to fulfill our obligations to our smaller towns as they bring forward CHIP plans. So we will go to the infamous pool as well, and hopefully we'll be granted a position to continue to do the work that CHIP is going to require of us into the future.
So you haven't actually gotten approval for that? Okay.
What we will do is we will show demand and then we'll go to the pool. Going to the next slide. Thank you. I love the fact I can see this on here. So you'll see a number there of 155. We just talked about the limited staff positions. We have 3 limited staff positions that are working on the CRRP and CIP awards. All of that money will go out the door, hopefully by the end of December. And so they will be doing things like site visits, following up to make sure funding is being spent the way it was supposed to be spent. That's how they will spend the next several months into the future.
And if you could translate the letters for us.
No. Community Investment Program, CRRP, somebody help me out. Community
Recovery.
And revitalization.
Revitalization, Community Recovery and Revitalization Program.
It took 3 of us, but when I took my job on November 3rd, I was provided with 4 pages of acronyms.
Yeah.
And
I know AHS has about 72 pages of that.
well, I'm glad I'm in DED.
So, yeah, you're doing that.
So a great deal of funding went to all the right places with the CRRP fund and CIP. Coming from the Rutland region, we received generous contributions towards projects that were vital to the economy. It was all time, and I'm watching these go through the system now, and it is statewide. All of your communities probably have in some way benefited from these funds. $421 million piece, I'm going to change here, is brownfields funds. This past year, we leveraged $23 million worth of brownfields funds. Again, an important economic tool. As you hear about housing, it all starts with the dirt, and the dirt needs to be cleaned up. And there are lots of sites around Vermont that need to be cleaned up. I always am talking about where I came from in Rutland, but if we were not able to clean up what we affectionately call the pit, which is the same similar pit that Newport has, seems like every community has a pit. And the reason that they are a pit is because they are brownfield sites. And everything that comes through these programs allow for development to happen. $18.3 billion has been leveraged through the Vermont Global Export. And you might want to know what the $5.9 billion figure is there, where it says services. The types of things that we sell are intellectual property, captive insurance industry, the travel industry, engineering services, education services. Those are the types of things that we're drawing money into the state by selling services overseas and outside the state. 1.2 billion in veggie. I will respectfully ask that we repeal the sunset on veggie. Yesterday I told another committee to keep it, which was the wrong thing to say apparently. We need that program to continue to move forward with our manufacturing community in particular. It is leveraging, when you look at that 1.2 billion, it's leveraging capital improvements, which are allowing for jobs. And there are lots of jobs that I'll talk about in a minute. How do we help train for those jobs? The Vermont Training Program. Over 15,000 people trained through the Vermont Training Program over the last several years.
Is that
And
15,000 seats? Because some people take more than one training program, right?
right, there are seats, right?
So it's not individual people.
Right.
It's,
There could be seats of training.
right.
And what's important about that, obviously, is it's enhanced pay that people get by going through that. And this is when I was an RDC director, it was one of my favorite grants because it was simple to get. It was not like trying to get a federal grant where you have to fill out lots and lots of forms. A person comes, Randall Zott comes, and he will help you fill out that form as an employer. And you will be able to get some training dollars as long as you fulfill the contract and the agreement. And I'm just going to keep going unless you stop me.
Yeah, but just one back here, the veggie program, is there something moving along to repeal the sunset?
There is a bill to repeal the sunset, and I believe it's going through Senate Economic Development. Is that where it's going through?
Yeah.
We have you've heard this, people say this before. We have very few economic development tools in our toolbox. That's an important tool in our toolbox.
Thank you.
And looking at program spotlights, international business, you heard a moment ago from Secretary Curley that we are looking for an investment of $150,000 to continue our relationship with a business called SIDEP. Don't ask me what it stands for because I even looked on their website to find out, and they call themselves SIDEP. And SIDEP is a Canadian company that focuses on direct investment and generation. And they work specifically for us. They don't work for New Hampshire, New York, Maine. We have an agreement with them. So they work specifically with Vermont and for lead generation.
So on this, we funded something for a year for this past year, is that correct?
Yes, we've had a 5-year contract.
Okay, and so what were the results from this year?
I would like to send you their report and then you can distribute that and you'll find that there are companies, because I thought that you might ask which companies that might have come through. So there are a couple different companies some of you may be aware of. One is Mavic in Waterbury, Canadian company. There's also Incentia, which is a heart monitor device company that is in Burlington. What I would like to do is get a broader list for you, and I talked to Tim Tierney about that today, so that you can see the results. We need to know what the return on investment is.
Yes.
And this 150,000 is actually over 2 years. So it would be 75,000 for each year. And we need to get, best thing is to get an extended contract. So we just don't do a year at a time. We'd like to get a 2-year contract.
So these companies that you're mentioning have actually opened offices in Vermont?
I'm going to need to get back to you on that figure. Yeah. Anything is okay.
Which one?
Mavic did.
Okay, that's the Waterbury one.
They make bicycle tires and wheels.
Yeah.
Wheels, I should say. Yeah, so to the commissioner's point, these businesses that don't produce in the report are businesses that were identified as wanting to, come into the US market and have actually set up shop in the US.
Okay.
I mean, there's some that are still in the pipeline, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering how, recent events and comments are affecting Canadians' interest in actually even coming to Vermont, which they know we love that.
Well, and I think Commissioner Pellant can talk to you a little bit more about the return rate of Canadians at this point. It has been an influence, and tariffs have been an influence.
Yeah.
And I can say, again, from my experience in the Rutland region, where they're trying to build a hotel right now, tariffs of $2 million more just for steel really affects that project. And that's just one business. So we're hoping to continue our positive relationship with Canada. We were recently, in November, we were in Newfoundland, and it was the Eastern Premiers and New England Governors Conference, which we will be hosting this coming fall. And we want them to know that we are a dedicated and loyal partner to them.
I think I saw Mike and then Wayne. But no, I missed that. Okay, Wayne.
So any of the businesses moving here due to tariffs?
Don't know the answer to that question, but there is outreach because they do want to have a Vermont presence so that they can avoid the tariffs. Have they moved here since? I don't know the answer to that question.
You haven't seen any change in the rate of people building, wanting to have businesses here in the last 4 or 5 years.
I don't know the history of that, but since the tariffs have come into effect, there are more phone calls about how do we base ourselves in the United States. Okay.
Now you can keep going.
Moving on to Vermont Employment Growth Incentive. We just talked about veggie a little bit, the amount of investment that that's bringing. You see it also as bringing jobs. Tax increment financing. I know you've heard about that in the past. There are 4 remaining opportunities for TIF districts around the state of Vermont. There are currently 9 in existence. Right now, Newport is actively engaged in applying for a TIF district for their downtown. And we'll see how that progresses as the spring goes along. TIP, a $2 billion, thank you very much, $2 billion infrastructure opportunity for the state of Vermont. That's $200 million a year for 10 years. It is a similar process to TIP, but specifically related to housing. It must be a housing project. And then the Economic Assistance Recovery Program. Again, we talked about CIP and CR, the number of projects and the investment is taking place.
We wanted to find a list of projects that would be on your website.
We will have a report as soon as we get through the process. We want to show you that report. What's happening right now is we are actively engaging with all of the recipients of grants to make sure that they're going to be spending the money. If they're not going to be spending the money, we have authorization to repurpose that to current projects, similar to a hotel project in downtown Rutland, which is actually a water wastewater project. Because costs have gone up since the money was provided, specifically around tariffs at some points, we need to repurpose that money to make sure the projects happen, if there's money left. Okay, thank you. The Vermont training program, talked about that a little bit. You'll see there are not a lot of asks from DED. We are asking for $150,000. We are asking to maintain everything that's in the budget currently for these programs. So that's why I'm here, is to let you know these are the programs that the budget's paying for. International trade, which is the STEP program. The STEP program provides for exporters to gain small amounts of money to do marketing. And you'll recognize some of the names of companies that are taking advantage of this. It's not a lot of money, but it's important money. You might hear the term or the business Ann Clark Cookie Cutters. They're in Rutland Town. They make or have made in 1 year 7 million cookie cutters. Their only competition was the country of China, and they do that right from Rutland Town. Cabot Hosiery in Northfield also recently participated, as did Liquid Measurement Systems in Fairfax, Vermont Natural Coatings in Hardwick. So it is spread around, and it's interesting that it's very diversified sectors of the economy that are benefiting from the small amount of money that we provide them to go to trade shows and be overseas.
So back to the Vermont training program for a moment. Did we put parameters on that so that large corporations were not allowed to use the VTP, that it was really businesses up to 50 or 100 employees or something? Are there any parameters, or can any business that operates in the state of Vermont?
You could have Randall come in, but I think it's any business in the state of Vermont could benefit.
I remember discussions about, pick a global foundries or something.
There was a one-time amount of money slated just for that project. And that was a separate silo.
But I'm just saying, using them as an example, big corporations have training budgets. And so using state dollars for big corporations who have training money and are, based outside but just have an office here is not a high priority. So I don't know where we're going with that.
Yeah. my memory serves me from serving on commerce.
Right.
Almost, well, back in starting in 2009. There are very strict guidelines. I don't know if they still exist, but they have salary, benefits, a whole lot of things that
That's right.
small businesses did not have.
Right.
So a lot of it was with people who were larger companies.
Yeah.
We had Eveready and St. Albans, we had IBM, you had, you know.
Yeah, GE Aviation.
Aviation, I mean, all sorts of, and
Right.
there were some more middle-sized companies, but very few small companies could meet the requirements. That were part of the
Yeah.
deal. And there was a drive at one point for the Northeast Kingdom companies to have a lower wage scale.
Yeah.
So that, because most of them didn't qualify.
Right.
You know, you had to have twice as much, 2 times over the minimum wage and 3 or 4 different benefits and I think it was
Yeah, they
even
were too small
out.
and then they didn't get the help they
Or they
needed.
didn't have the kind of pay scale that qualified.
Right.
So there was like a veggie light, or maybe it was,
But yeah.
you probably weren't here then, but that was
That's what I say a lot. I wasn't here then. But one of the things that I would like to do, if you would allow me, is I'll send you the report that recently came out that Randall put together. And it would be great to have him come back and talk about this because he is, in a recent conversation, he pointed out that wage scale is not an issue anymore, that businesses, even small businesses, have to pay a whole lot more per hour
Yeah.
just to get people to come. So as far as a barrier, there really aren't barriers like there might have been before.
Right. I think it should, so Tiff and then Tom.
Yes, there were conversations some years ago about issue of incumbent worker training versus new worker training. And do you know how the Vermont training program breaks out in terms of incumbent versus bringing on new workers?
I do not. We would need to ask Randall that question, but I do, going back to how it can be used, if I may change the subject slightly. Incumbent workers are trained using a contract, and that contract is agreed to between Randall and the business. And there's a period of time in which, say, there's a new piece of equipment that comes in that they need to be trained on, that would be built into that contract. Or you can train, they can pay, we could pay for half of the training for a trainer that's coming in to work with incumbent employees or new employees.
Is there, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
question? It's just, this is there an evaluation, and I know you're very new, so, but is there an evaluation of kind of the but-for rationale for spending these dollars on training? I mean, do they evaluate whether a company, I mean, any organization has to invest in training? You know, whether you're a nonprofit organization, private healthcare, whatever. And so I'm just wondering, you have to kind of build that into your budget. And so is prioritization given to companies that really otherwise couldn't provide that training because the technology has changed so much, or because I don't.
I'm gonna have to say, not to my knowledge. Money is used up every year. I don't know that there's a long line for that money. So let me get to Randall.
Okay.
Better answers to your questions.
Thanks. Tom.
Vermont training program, the $1.1+ million. We just heard from the Department of Labor about a bunch of job development programs that are being reverted, where money's being reverted. No relationship between this training program and those that live in labor. Is that? It seems like to me that they're related, right? A training program is related to what labor was talking about with their, I mean, they're not directly related. There's no thread except for the concept of training. I mean, they were giving a lot of money of where programs of job training were not, people weren't applying or people didn't know they existed or whatever it was, and the money being referred.
I try to help, just because I was a former, thank you. So I haven't looked to see what they're reverting specifically, Rep. Stevens, but the difference between the two programs is at ACCD, we are working with employers to provide training that they need collectively. And it's not to replace their training dollars, but to sort of supplement them. The Department of Labor works more with individuals who are trying to, upskill or get new training or enter the job market. So both of them serve a really important purpose to getting us where we want to be at the end of the day, like our end goal of having people have meaningful employment that pays a livable wage. But the two programs are different because we are specifically working with incumbent workers that are within a company, an employer already, an existing employee. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just curious that we reverted or the administration is proposing to revert so many funds. So, and I know that our commerce committees in both the House, Senate, and the Labor Department have worked for years to try to get job training money and to see it go away.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to judge
Right.
the success of the program if the money wasn't spent?
Right. So I think, again, it'd be a great question for Commissioner Smith, but I just, what I was hearing here was sort of people trying to understand why there was a difference between the two. And it's a lot of the many of the Department of Labor programs are also federally funded or have federal, parameters and guidelines. And so that's why I believe, and I wasn't around when VTP was created, but I believe it was created to be a more nimble program to use for incumbent workers and employers that didn't necessarily fall into the eligibility of what the Department of Labor can offer. But so I can't I know what you're getting at, and I can't specifically answer. I think she would be able to help you on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Here was Northern Borders Regional Commission. And we were awarded through Vermont, $25 million, almost $26 million worth of funding. The governor is on the commission for that and has worked diligently to push funding to Vermont. And we expect that more money will be available next year. And this is back to will there be federal funding next year? Our expectation is that there will be federal funding for the Northern Borders Regional Commission. We are focusing that money in large part on infrastructure. And then there's the captive insurance industry. They are knocking it out of the park as far as the number of captives. We are the largest group of captives in the world at 707 active captives right now. That has cultivated 500 jobs and brings in a little more than $33 million into our budget, which pays for a marketing person and the work to maintain the system. And there is money left over that goes into the general fund. And then Apex Accelerator is a group of individuals that connect government contracts with Vermont businesses to the tune of this past year, $287 million worth of contracts working with 250 businesses.
That used to be called something else.
That used to be TTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. I'm not sure Apex made it any easier, so.
Yeah, this probably sounds more interesting, but yeah. Okay.
And then we go to the ups and downs, unless you have questions. I'm going to send you two reports.
Yes.
On international trade and the other with, for the contract, and the other will be the Vermont training program.
So I think just, we don't need to worry about salaries. They are what they are. I'm looking to see if there's questions. That seems okay.
We do have a minor technical correction that we're seeking general funds. So if you think back to last year, we had come in requesting $350,000 for to expand our international business recruitment efforts. At the end of the day, I think a bill passed the Senate that had us getting $150,000 in base funding, and then conference, it was decided that would be one time. when that 150,000 was pulled out of the DD budget, instead of being pulled out of personal services and operating where we had it budgeted, it came out of grants. And so we're just proposing to swap that to ensure that in those expenditure categories that fall in B801 of the budget, that it's the right mix of dollars. And so you'll see this negative 130,000, a negative 20,000, and then a plus 150 under grants. And that's just to fix that little technical.
So it should be under grants, not under personal services. Okay,
Um,
and then the minus 2.6 million, is that a federal grant that's going away?
Yeah, so on the federal side, two things happening. One, we've had a long, I think since 2015, relationship with a sub-agency within the Department of Defense to provide us money to help companies diversify away from federal contracts. This goes back to a time when DoD was spending less on procurement. And so the money was to help companies diversify. So we've had a long-standing relationship through this grant, and the grant has expired. And this was this was happening prior to the new administration coming into office. So it's not something that was a surprise to us. But at this point, the spending authority can fall out. So that accounts for pretty much everything but the 2.6 million. For the 2.6 million, we have some funding from prior brownfield awards that we were very close to obligating through awards to folks that are trying to do remediation work. We don't have a new grant from the federal government at this time, and that's just because those brownfield dollars are a part of a competitive grant program, and we just didn't get funding this time around. But the hope is when we get the next opportunity, which hopefully will be this year, eventually get some more money and have it back. So those are the two federal changes, but once again, it's not anything that was unexpected, although certainly we were disappointed to not get a brownfield award this time around. But
You got some brownfield, we put a lot of money into brownfields from our, ARPA, our money over the years. And I'm looking at the carry forward report. I know DDC has brownfield money, almost $6 million in carry forward. Do you have any, maybe it's not you. Well, you will know, Dan, but since you're bringing up brownfields, do you have carry forward in brownfields?
we did have some going back a few years, and the goal is, to sort of stack these different sources to a couple, I think it's one or two big projects that we're on the cusp of getting agreement on. And it's really just tied to, the developers have to find money from, a bunch of different places. So I think it's just a matter of, okay, the developer's feeling good. They have all the financing they need. So now we can finalize these grant agreements to do the brownfield remediation portion of the work. So the funds just sort of hang out there until we get to the finish line as far as that being ready to go.
So you have plans for all of
So the plan is, yes, we are very close to obligating every dime of brownfield money that we currently have. Any other questions on the ups and downs?
See,
Pretty much, push my seat.
you're off the hot seat.
Farrell.
Hello, for the record, Alex Farrell, Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm going to hand out a little bit of paper while we sort of set the table here, so I'm going to pass these in both directions. Sorry to use so much paper. And one last one, I promise. There we go. So starting at a high level, you can see 40 FTEs. That's reflective of where we'll be after 7 limited service positions expire this year. So after that, we will land at 40 FTEs. You can see in the slide deck just our org chart. As a quick reminder, we are 4 divisions in the Department of Housing and Community Development. We do have a pretty broad portfolio, including historic preservation. when I came into the division 5 years ago, or the department 5 years ago, the housing division consisted of just 2 FTEs, just 2 positions. Now with some expansion of limited service and some of the ARPA dollars, in total, I believe that's now a 7-person team. After everything sugars out, we're looking to keep that stable at about going. I'm not going to go through the names, but you have them for your reference of the leadership team at DHCD. All right, so VHIP. I've been in here for the past few years talking to you all about VHIP, and I think there's a fair amount of familiarity with it, but I've given you this stat sheet so that you all can see at a very high level what VHIP has produced, the level of investment, and the average spending. As a reminder, the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, these are grants of up to $50,000, could be up to $70,000 with certain accessibility accommodations. The average grant through this program is $40,000. The object is to either rehabilitate a unit that has fallen into disrepair and out of the housing stock, convert a commercial space, or divvy up a space. So a large single family home, maybe a big Victorian or farmhouse, and split it into a few smaller homes. What this has produced is almost 1,200 units over the past 5 years. The way this functions with the property owners, the property owner accepts the grant, and in exchange, they give us either 5 years or 10 years commitment. The 5-year commitment is to rehouse somebody exiting homelessness. And again, there's a covenant on their property that remains in place until they fulfill that obligation. The other option is to double that time, so a 10-year obligation. And during that 10 years, they need to rent at HUD fair market rent. The reason we chose HUD fair market rents is so that this could be used with Section 8 vouchers. Question that we get quite often is what happens to these units after the covenant expires, which is a good question. Our desires that they remain on the market, and I think an even bigger win is that they remain on the market at the same rents. So if you look at the stat sheet, you can see right here, there are some colored letters, and it shows you the evolution of VHIP. It started with CARES Act funding, then was funded with ARPA funding. That's when we first established the name VHIP, and then it's been appropriated one-time state funds. But the very first tranche of CARES Act funding, we called this RHRP. VHIP was not established yet in statute, and so we ran what was, in essence, a pilot program. Those are the first investments that have come to the end or are coming to the end of their 5-year covenant. And so we've been very interested and have put a lot of work into having a mechanism, a feedback mechanism in place so that we could find out. See my concentration, even with the noise, I stayed.
Doing well. It's been going out.
Gotta work under pressure.
And they're all out here. There's a lot, it's standing around the please be quiet sign, talking loud.
Well, it is recovery day. I'm on the board of V4, so I hope folks met the V4 people.
I've met with all of my folks from Madison County who are here today.
All right.
It was good. But I would like to know on your DHIP is how many people have actually gone from exiting homeless to being in one of these places? Because you have a chart for that too?
Yes, we do keep track of that, and I'm just trying to see if the number is on here. This is part of a larger stat sheet that I can send to you, so that's, I'll send you the full sheet. What I can tell you is everything that is green, almost everything that's green is a 5-year covenant, so it is somebody who exited homeless. That's right. So if you look at the pie chart, all of the green is somebody who exited homeless, with some exceptions where we had to grant waivers where they tried and the coordinated entry couldn't.
Okay.
But
so a lot fewer of the blue ones, since I see a big change between completed and upcoming.
and so just to clarify, the blue ones are mixed. Some of the blue is folks who exited homelessness, and some of them are just HUD fair market rents. So the blue represents VHIP 2.0, where we began to offer the option. You could either do the 5-year covenant where somebody exits homelessness, or you could do double the time. It's not that requirement, but you do have to rent fair market rents.
So yes, if you can get us some numbers.
I can, yes. I'll send the full stat packet.
So it's been a couple of years since I paid attention, and I know that the rules on VHIP have changed or evolved over time. Two questions. First, when we build up to 5 units in a new building, is that getting X amount of dollars per unit? Or is there a cap on how many units they can receive subsidy for?
Yeah, so that's a good memory. VHIP cannot be used for new construction where there will be more than 5 units in the building. When there is a number of, so up to 5 units in a new building, it's just a $50,000 cap per unit.
Okay, so somebody can. And the application process is actually very complicated especially for the mom and pops of the world who. It's, you have to pay for it. You have to get approved for a project, then you have to pay for it, and then you get reimbursed. Is that still the way it goes?
That's right.
Okay, so, and then. Again, this is something I'm not sure it went all the way through the process, but there was a proposal a couple of years ago to say, if I wanted to buy myself out of the covenant. I could do that, and then the 5-year covenant, just to be clear, I think is, that's a repayment. And if you go out to 10-year, it can turn into a grant or rather than a loan. Is that still accurate?
So other way around. So the 5-year option is a grant. The 10-year option is a forgivable loan, where it's a loan up front and then 10%, 10% each year. We did recently get authorization to make everything a loan, so the 5-year could also now operate as a loan, forgiven 20% each year.
So, if I didn't want to rent to or be involved in the program any longer, I can just try to figure out if I exit the program, are there credits or I have to pay for the rest of the time?
Sure, yeah, if somebody wanted to buy out their covenant, yeah, in any event, ever since the very beginning of the program, the property owner has the right to pay us the money back and release the covenant.
And do you have a record on how many property owners may have done that?
We do have a record on it. It's not a large number. I only know because I have to sign off when it happens. It's a very small number, but we can get that data and send you the statute.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Which is a good thread to keep going down. So you also have this sheet. So you notice this color jives with the RHRP when you look at the 3 different iterations of the program. What this represents is the first 60 folks who are coming off of their 5-year covenant. Again, this was CARES Act, so this didn't have all the same VHIP rules in place, but this is our first look at data. What are people going to do with these units after they no longer have the covenant in place? And you can see 56 of these 60 units that we have data on so far are going to keep rents at the HUD for market rents. Even once they're no longer required to, they're keeping rents where they are and keeping tenants in place. 3 other units, you can see there's a little bit more detail here. One of those 3 units that's raising their rent will come up to market rate. The other 2 are increasing $100 above HUD for market rents. And then one unit, the owner didn't respond. So we put mechanisms in place to keep collecting this data so that we know directionally where we're headed. This is an encouraging start. We're not shocked based on the feedback that we've gotten from landlords that this has built connections with the coordinated entry folks, with the housing authorities, and with really a population of folks that these property owners wouldn't have otherwise planned to be housing providers for. Okay, so and I guess to put a bow on VHIP, our ask this year is $4 million in base funding. I'd say Secretary Curley summed it up well. If we're going to be able to staff this, the 2 positions that currently oversee and administer this program for the state are limited service. They expire this year. Even with one-time funding, VHIP will end this year because we don't have an option to keep positions going. So base funding would enable us to go to the position pool to seek 2 positions to keep VHIP.
Are the 2 positions approved?
We need base funding in order to make the request.
The chicken or the egg? Okay.
Yeah. This is
I have a question.
just to clarify the point you're making, but I will just mention that I have a VHIP, that committee's heard me say this before, big fan of the program. I was in one of the early, that we must be coming up on the 5-year mark. Ours, we have no intention to change. We've had the same tenant in there all along. What's different this year? I mean, because we were in the same situation last year where you were hoping for base, we gave you one time, you have been able to continue it. What's the difference between that? I mean, if it was one time.
This is the year that the positions expire. So I was making the same plea last year because I knew this year was coming and I said next year my positions will expire.
Okay.
We're here.
Got it. All right.
And when do they expire? July 1st or December 31st or what's?
December 31st.
December 31st.
Thank
So
you.
have you budgeted them for half a year?
We've set aside admin from previous BHIP appropriations, and we have enough to get us through the end of the year.
Yeah.
Uh,
The end of the
And
calendar.
the end of the calendar year, yeah.
Right, so you didn't budget for the rest of the year for the new positions that you're gonna ask for, the $4 million comes through?
That's a good question, Madam Chair. We would, so there would be two sources. We can keep drawing admin off of the VHIP program. I assume we would have that. We also received a one-time appropriation last year. Just $450,000 one-time funding to support limited service positions. So we're also able to draw off of that support.
So you actually can get, I mean, assuming you get the positions approved through the position pool, you have the money set aside to pay for the salaries for all of fiscal year 27.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Including from admin off of this $4 million.
All right, so we won't see you at budget adjustment saying that you got money that's second half of the year for this position.
You wouldn't, that's accounted for. In fact, that's the only way we could make an ask of the position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So we'll move on to MER. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. This is a program that already was funded in the base budget as of FY 26, remains in the base budget this year. I provided a stat sheet for you if you want to dive in more as to what MER can do. The reason we're seeking a one-time appropriation of $800,000 is we had $830,000 on the books that had been appropriated to us by the E-Board after the July 23 floods. That funding was to compensate mobile home owners who weren't being adequately compensated by FEMA for condemned mobile homes. And so we covered the gap for them. That funding was very focused and constrained, and so we weren't able to expend anymore. We basically provided everybody with funds that we could. So we had $830,000 that was locked sitting in that fund that we couldn't use. So this is essentially a request that was reverted. Now we're asking to repurpose $800,000 of that into MER, serving a similar community, but now broadening to anyone that qualifies for this program.
So this is, since the money was reverted, this, you can only get it from general fund unless you can find money somewhere else and repurpose it. This is a general fund.
Yeah, it's general fund money, and just be clear, in the language for FY 27, the reversion is built in there. And so the reversion actually happening is based on you passing the budget with the reversion and then swapping.
Right.
It.
Oh, so they're both steps are in this budget?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Oh, so will be.
There's questions on MER, that's all I had.
Do you have any, let's see, you've got your projects, is this across all 14 counties or?
MER,
Yeah, I mean, it's the projects that have been awarded, you cover all the counties?
yes, projects have been awarded in all counties. And, you know, again, like the secretary said, we see this as our upstream investments to keep precariously housed households in their homes.
So is any new housing created by this, or it's just it's also substandard, it's prevented from falling apart?
Yeah, it's a great question. So of the three types of awards, infill awards can support new housing. So it's not going to go into the home, but it can improve the lot so a new home can go there. So it supports new home creation as well.
And do you know, when you have projects awarded, are each of those equate to one home?
When a project is awarded. So if it's an infill award, it's awarded by lot. And the home repair awards are awarded on a per home basis.
I'm seeing projects awarded 858, and I don't know how that would translate to homes.
Sure, the reason we, in the summary, say
Ah.
projects is because it breaks down by the project type, because sometimes we're referring to a home award, to the
Okay.
homeowner, other times it's to a lot.
Okay. Which will eventually become a home.
That's right, exactly.
Good.
I've actually had a chance to see some of the projects that they worked on this last year that they've conducted. You know, some of the older places like in St. John's, but also heading north of other locations north of there, for sure.
Yep.
They've all been really well done. Great. Large house, 2 or 3 families.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super.
Yeah, in case,
And close to services.
yeah,
Which is great.
thank you. I won't dive into all the other things we do. If you see something on this list that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Do you control downtown information funds?
Vibrancy funds, downtown vibrancy funds do flow through us, yes.
And how are they being funded this year? I got a email from the economic development in the Waterbury. They're advocating to make sure that the funding is still there. Not sure yet.
Yeah.
Where it is.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yep, it is in our budget. Dan, do you want to talk about, we were able to essentially increase the fund to fund all the downtowns in the program by moving money around within our department budget.
So the practice has been that every designated downtown has access to a vibrancy fund, a vibrancy grant of about 25,000 every year. We figured out a way to continue supporting that. We do have 4 new downtowns coming into the mix. But we've budgeted to give a $25,000 grant to every town that's part of that designation.
There was an article today about 802 homes.
Yeah, there was.
And it talked about spending $500,000 to do the designs. Was that just part of your budget for this current year? It was just built in there?
It was budget.
Okay.
It was funds that we received in interdepartmental transfer, FY 25.
I think you're even earlier. I think there are funds that came to us from AHS. And yeah, I think I can't remember what year exactly, but we've been slowly spending them down through the different iterations or phases of
Yeah.
Homes for All program. Yeah, those.
I heard you were doing it in Essex Junction. I knew that. And then you've got Manchester and White River Junction.
That's right, Hartford, yes.
Yeah, so how far along are they all happening sort of at the same speed or, and then they will just be able to, the towns have to agree to the zoning? Is that the idea? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those that are maybe less familiar with Homes for All, it's a 3-phase initiative. The first was a toolkit that we published in spring of 24 that teaches folks who are interested in becoming a small scale developer. It's a textbook that walks through all the steps how to do that. Phase 2, I can send this handout around. We're doing hands-on training, both in-person workshops, training folks to become small scale developers, as well as online curriculum. So I can email this to the committee afterward. The third phase is 802 Homes, which is where we're developing a catalog of building designs from ADU up to 4 unit. And the idea is these will be open source designs. So we can save a builder that chooses to use these designs 10% of their budget just by using these. The development process of creating these designs is a partnership with 3 communities, 3 that Madam Chair just listed off. And we just had our, what we're calling charrettes, which is our initial engagement with the communities. One is actually happening today in Hartford. And this is an opportunity for the public to show up, look at some design concepts, not building plans yet, and give their input as to whether or not they feel that these are designs they would be comfortable with being by right, as in there's no discretionary review, it's pre-approval. So that's exactly right, Madam Chair, is that once these pilot communities have participated, once the designs are set, they're agreeing to accept these pre-approved. So if somebody comes to build one of these ADUs or up to 4 unit designs, they just go to the zoning administrator, get the approval, and they can go build as long as they comply with setbacks and other requirements.
Great.
So you actually have a program to train developers.
Yes.
You remember that article that came out, was it last fall, about Jonah?
Yes, that's right.
Right, in Bradford.
Jonah
Like, we
Rich.
all want to clone him and
So my concern is that Land Access Opportunity Board is saying the same thing. So is there any?
It is. So phase two is coordinated with the Land Access Opportunity Board. So what we're trying to do is braid together the training, the designs, and then the capital. So Land Access Opportunity Board is interested in doing more direct TA. So this is curriculum, general curriculum. People can come to the classes and get broad training. For emerging or BIPOC developers, the Land Access Opportunity Board can provide technical assistance and then direct grants to help capitalize these folks who might not otherwise have access to capital. The reason VHIP is such an important part of this overall strategy is VHIP is also a capital source for the project itself, whereas LAOB, you want to hear more from them than me, but they're interested in capitalizing the operation of these newer BIPOC developers.
so good that you're all working together.
We try to coordinate.
Great. Lynn?
Yeah, thank you. Are these single family homes, these small scale?
Yeah, good question. It's ADUs at the smallest, and then 2, 3, and 4 unit buildings. So I don't have an image on this, but the goal is for these to be infill. And so in many cases, you may walk by one of these 4 unit multifamily buildings, but it'll look and feel like a single family home.
Great.
Nothing huge on these ups and downs. It is broken up across 2 pages. These under the general funds, I think the significant pieces are VHIP. You see that flow through both as 240,000 for staffing. I think we've set aside 10,000 for what we call operations. So
That's
you
2
need to go
positions.
do site visits, things like that. 2 positions, yes, and then 3.75 million for grants. I do want to point out this transportation fund piece that's new for FY 27. So you may know that in statute, a portion of registration fees for EV vehicles, and then a portion for, actually, I think 100% of the registration fees for EV vehicles, and then a portion for hybrid vehicles is supposed to be directed to DHCD for build out, EV support equipment build out. The way and so that had been in statute, I think, for a couple of years. And so when we built the FY 26 budget, we constructed it so that basically V-Trans is still getting the transportation fund appropriation, and then they're passing it along to us. This year, what we're doing is we're proposing a direct appropriation of T-Fund dollars to DHCD. And then you'd see in the governor's language, actually wrote it down, E 923.1, there's language allowing the T-Fund to support this program.
Because you're the appropriate people to do that work.
Yeah. Working with AOT, just based on sort of the environment right now, they're anticipating that registrations are probably going to level off and possibly even drop. And so where we budgeted for about 1.7 million in FY 26, we're actually anticipating it probably be closer to 1.4. We're being pretty conservative and just asking for $1 million. And then I think in working with finance and management, the understanding is if we need an excess receipt to spend more down the road. Federal, the big piece is CDBG-DR. You'll see 18.9 million of new spending authority for grants. I think the hope would be is we'll get that obligated in FY 27, and so that would probably fall back out again next year when we come back to you. And yeah, I think that's really it, unless you have specific questions on the moving pieces.
Not seeing any. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, there is one question here, right under the, in the grants, you have very bottom reduction, EVSC reduced to move from IDT to T-Fund. Is that just a Does that offset the $1 million?
Is that off of $7 million?
No, it says 1.7.
Oh,
Post, it's the very last one at the bottom.
yeah, so we,
It's transfer.
yeah, so the way we had budgeted in FY '26 is the EV funds would flow to us from V-Trans, so it'd be an interdepartmental transfer. The construct for FY '27 is a direct appropriation of transportation fund dollars to us, so that way it cuts out the need to, negotiate an MOU with AOT and then have the funds transferred to us. And
So you're
you'd
giving it
see,
back to the T fund.
yeah, and so you see, there's a column for transportation fund where we've now added $1 million for EV
Yes, okay.
grants. And we're reducing it because V-Trans is anticipating there'll probably be fewer of these registrations.
Sort of ties back on. So it's an appropriation from the T fund.
Appropriation is from the T fund, yeah.
Because I saw this appropriation from the T fund to BGS for the on the interstate, welcome centers on the interstate. So as opposed to just a transfer, so when they're doing a transfer, they're doing that with an MOU.
That's, well, at least for EV, FCD and DHCD, yes, that's how we've done it is, we
So there's
work at an MOU.
B number for your appropriation would be in the B section.
It's in the B802, which is DHCD's section of
I was
the,
trying to get straight because it seems like they're doing it both ways, and I just wondering what the difference is. It sounds like the MOU is the key point.
yeah, that's, I don't know how V-Trans is working that with BGS, but I do know the investment BGS is making is in those welcome centers, whereas the investment we're making is around residential developments, and having the support equipment there. So it's a little bit different, end game, I guess.
Okay, on to tourism. All right, well, hello, everybody. Heather Pelham, for the record, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing. So thank you for the time today. Yeah, starting right off, we have a staff of 12. We had a couple of limited service positions that we were utilizing as we were spending down an EDA grant. We have expended that money, so we don't need those two positions. They are going away, but there's not, quote unquote, an issue with those. And then as we get to sort of like really top level on the next slide, this is really what the visitor economy is all about. So just to kind of frame everybody, there's, I'll give you the punchline here. There is not a budget ask here, but I do want to reinforce what it is that the visitor economy supports. And we are bringing 16 million visitors here on an average annual basis, who spend $4.2 billion in the state. $4.2 billion is 9% of the state's GDP. As we look across other states, the national average is travel and tourism is about 3%. So it just shows that Vermont is 3 times more dependent on our travel and tourism trade for that visitor spending than other states.
3 times better to come to.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that people know about us. So the third stat there is one that I think is vitally important for folks to understand. Visitors are bringing in, and this is just both the 4.2 billion and this 300 million. This is just direct spending. On the 4.2 billion visitor spending, if we were to include indirect, so supply chain or induced purchases due to wages, that would be almost 7 billion, 6.95. So I'm being very conservative here in terms of the impact, but direct spending, visitors, I do affectionately refer to them as temporary taxpayers. They are bringing in $300 million a year in direct tax revenue, which is the equivalent of over $1,000 per Vermont household. So as we think about how to keep Vermont more affordable, I would hope that you would keep in mind that our visitors are helping to keep Vermont more affordable for everyone.
So how do you count, how do you get to the 293? So I'm thinking, you have the meals and rooms tax, but Vermonters go from Middlebury to JP, can spend the night in a bed and breakfast, and Vermonters go out to dinner. So how do you separate Vermonters spending this, raising your tax revenue versus tourists? So we contract with professional firm Tourism Economics to do our economic impact study. That's where these numbers come from. That full report is on our website. I'd be more than happy to share it with folks. It is based on an in-plan model, which is very standard in terms of, how those kinds of economic impacts are calculated, but they are based on as much raw data as we can possibly get. So yes, room to meals tax, but also, our occupancy rates, if it's visitation at state parks or at the welcome centers, we basically feed tourism economics every and any piece of data that we can. So that is as accurate as possible. So they have to make some assumptions about, of the people who go out to dinner this year, how many are tourists versus how many are locals, and the same with state parks or spending. Yeah, and they look at day visitors versus overnight visitors. I mean, there's lots of things that go into that calculus. Yes, that means, so I saw Dave and then Tom.
I recall several years ago, we were upstairs in a different room. I'm pretty sure there was an economist with you, and he explained that they analyzed credit card data. Does that ring a bell?
It was probably Ken Jones, who was an employee of the agency for many years.
Yep.
Yes, credit card spending data is part of what we provide to tourism economics when they do their analysis.
Two questions. So there's 293 drugs. Every industry will say, we're responsible for, like, the craft beer industry brings in X amount of money, and the wine industry will say similar. How do you differentiate between what those independent, those separate industries claim that their impact is?
Sure. So if you, I can provide copies of that for the committee if you'd like to see it. Our economic impact report breaks down all that spending by sector. So yes, some of it certainly is in accommodations and food services. And whether you're looking at direct spending versus indirect and induced, it does switch. So sometimes if it's an induced effect and it comes from wages that someone makes because they're working at a hotel, they might be spending that on healthcare, education in different sectors versus direct, which is mostly in retail, accommodations, food services, recreation, and so forth. So in that report, it breaks down how they have come to those numbers to accurately reflect, where that money is being spent.
These numbers that are up on the chart are from 2024, 2025, we saw a proposal to have a 51st state, and that country didn't really like that.
Yeah.
So it affected quite a few industries, especially in northern Vermont. I'm just curious now to, for instance, Chesterfield cheese got hammered by not having the north. I'm not sure that there are others. When will we know what the final figures of the effect of that proposal to be the 51st state will?
I appreciate the question. It is frustrating that there is such a lag in data that, 2024 is the latest that we can provide. Some of that is that our own tax data is not available to the next summer, so we won't be able to provide 25 for quite some time. But to your point, 2024, we saw the benefit of the total solar eclipse. 2025, we saw the opposite effect of federal rhetoric. And yeah, it was a doozy of a year. We have seen that our credit card spending is down basically in half. So we are down year to date 48% in credit card spending from our Canadian visitors, which basically calculates into a loss of about $75 million in visitor spending in 2025. Visitation from Canada is about 5% of our total visitation. But to your point, it is felt much more acutely in the northern part of the state. Doing what we can do to mitigate that. We've really done a number of things, and a lot of this detail on all of our programs is in that very thick budget book that you have. Our department takes that task very seriously, so there's a lot of information in there. So I will just encourage folks that on anything I'm speaking today, if you want to know more about that, it's in the thick budget book. But in terms of, our response to the situation with federal rhetoric is, number one, we were able to, make sure we had the best available data. So we've been tracking Canadian visitor sentiment, how likely are folks able to can come here or not. We've worked with the Chamber of Commerce to set up basically a portal for businesses who are interested in offering a discount to potentially entice folks to, if they're willing to come across the border.
a way that we can direct that information to visitors. We have also, we thought a lot about messaging and what we can do and what we can't do and what we can affect and what we can't affect. And, everything we see from the message testing is that, yes, our neighbors basically do love Vermont, but it's a line they can't cross at this moment. So we're really focusing on what we can do to make sure that when they are ready, that they will come back. And we did launch a program in the fall when things had quieted down just a little bit. A digital display ad that basically was what we called our numbers campaign. So we in both English and French Canadian, we had ads that said, was just like comparing two numbers. So like 18,000 miles of trails, 100% love for Canada. 252 welcoming communities, 100% love for Canada. So we're doing what we can to make sure that our neighbors know that we want to welcome them with open arms when they feel they can. But will the 2025 numbers show a decrease? I definitely expect that, yes.
That's a lot if you're saying 48% increase in credit card. You have indicators now.
Yes, we do have.
$75 million. And, we also have an exchange rate that benefits us when in Canada and not Canadian.
Absolutely.
On top of everything.
It is multi-layered. So there's concern about the rhetoric, there's safety concerns at the border, there's the exchange rate. It's not just one thing. And we, as Vermont or as the Department of Tourism, don't have the ability to really affect those root causes, but we're certainly doing what we can.
Yeah.
That exchange rate, I was just looking at it in the past 5 years, it's gone from 25% to 40%. So it's been trending upwards. So
Yeah.
people don't like losing 40% of their dollar when they come down.
No, they don't. And so, when we look at travel sentiment if I have the numbers right, in a normal year, we would see about 20 to 25% of Canadians saying that they would plan to come to visit the US. Now that's down to 15%. So, and border crossings, we I think it was July, we had the height of the decline, if that's a double negative there, but, and I think, it was 35% decrease in border crossings. We've now improved to about 20%. But those numbers are the latest I can remember from November, which is not necessarily like a high, visitation season for us. Really, we see the most Canadian visitors in July and August.
Questions?
The last stat on this slide is just the visitor economy. And again, this comes from that same tourism economics report, supports over 30,000 jobs. That is about 10% of our workforce. And so I think that one of the things that I just want to kind of note here is that, our role at ACCD, one of the things that I see is that we are really, in terms of how we are supporting business in Vermont, is that we are bringing customers to all of our local businesses. Those customers are helping to keep those businesses afloat and helping to keep those people employed.
So I'm wondering if we can find what your company does all these stats for you. What NAICS codes or whatever they use to determine a job in the tourism industry. So going back to what Tom said, the Brewers or Jasper Hill, you could argue that they do tourism too, even though they're actually manufacturers and producing stuff for all of us. So is there a way to sort of get a better handle on what they're considering tourist jobs?
Yeah, I think if you look at again, I'm happy to share the report. In my mind, I'm seeing this chart where they break down where the jobs are in all those different sectors.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things to think about you're absolutely right. Like everyone's trying to quantify their economic impact. I'm the first to say these are overlapping Venn diagrams, right? So we're not trying to double count necessarily. I think we're just trying to put it in a context of other large industries. So it's not meant to say that we're going to squabble over this one job.
No, and I'm not suggesting that you are. I'm just sort of interested. It's a curiosity.
Yeah.
What do they count as tourism? Because, some of the shops on Church Street might be drawing tourists, right? So.
Sure. So I think accommodations is clearly this one, and that's the biggest bar you'll see on those charts. I think that when it gets down to if it's a retail establishment, then they're looking at sales and use tax, and they're looking at day visitors versus overnight and what's the average spend. And if they're spending about that much, then how does that get divvied out under X number of businesses? So I'm not an economist, but I
No, it's just very interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the broad picture of what it is what we do. There's just 4 slides here, basically the big buckets of our work. So clearly destination marketing is really where we focus our time. We utilize a range of different tactics, whether that's paid media, owned media, earned media to basically make sure that folks around the country and around the world, when we can, make sure that they know about Vermont. Again, there's a lot of detail in the big budget narrative of, I understand, I often hear like, well, we never see any of your ads. It's like, well, I'm sorry, it's because you guys are already here. So that's why we don't play them in Vermont. But there's a lot of detail there about our particular creative assets and so forth. But I did just want to note with the 2 bullet points that I provided here is that we take very seriously our ability to quantify what is the ROI of our efforts. And so there's 2 bullet points here that I just want to pull out. So we were spending down a large federal grant that you folks are aware of from the EDA for the last 3+ years. One of the things we were able to do this summer was a large out-of-home installation in the New York City market. So out-of-home, that's basically kind of what it sounds like, is on the street. So we had a combination of street-level kiosks in Brooklyn. There was over 160 of them. We were also able to do transit advertising on the Long Island Railroad and on the Metro North. Part of that buy, we were able to do a brand list study, and not only did of the people who, so basically they do like if you're exposed to the ad, then they survey you and say, do you remember seeing this ad? So we were able to achieve 50% of the people who were exposed to the ads remembered them. And and this is just from this one portion of our summer campaign, of those who remembered seeing the ad, that we were able to, they had a 30% increase in brand consideration, which is, would you come to Vermont? So 30% jump, which is above benchmark for most travel and tourism ads. It's an 18% lift. We were able to achieve a 30% lift. There's more stats on that in the book, but then another one that we did was specifically on our winter advertising campaign. There's a lot of math that goes behind these numbers, but basically this is from another company called Smari Insights. This is what they do, advertising effectiveness. What we're really trying to, we understand that people will come to Vermont anyway. I'm okay with that. But what we do want to make sure is that when we are spending money on paid advertising, that we understand what is the incremental lift. So what is the travel increment that we get based on our advertising? So for the last winter's campaign, we spent $538,000 on that campaign. We were able to get a 44% brand awareness. So that's how many people who were targeted who remember seeing the ads. So there's a bunch of math there about, okay, this is how many households, and this is how many people actually came. So again, a lot of math. It ended up being a 3.6% increment, which translates into 145,000 trips that we can say specifically these people, we know these people came specifically because of our ads. We can then see average trip spending. And so out of that $538,000, and the amount they spent over $300 million here. So that is a 574 to 1 return on investment for visitor spending in Vermont based on $1 of advertising. We can also, that same campaign brought in $23 million of tax revenue, which is a 43 to 1 return on investment specifically for that one campaign. So
Everything should be that successful.
I would like to make the point that we are on the revenue side of the equation. We are bringing money into the state. What we do, we can prove the effectiveness of what we do. It is a very tight budget year. We know how much the education system is putting a pressure on the general fund. That is why I'm not coming to you with a base appropriation request. But I will also say, and maybe this is a good transition to the next slide, with the federal funds that we did receive over the last couple of years, not only were we able to fund that advertising that I mentioned, but also the advertising effectiveness study that I mentioned. We also were able to do a brand perception study. And it's a very sobering report when we realize we know that there's competition out there. Some of the conclusions in the report is that Vermont's problem is not active rejection. Our problem is we are just overlooked. And so in a national survey, just, no prompts, where would you like to visit in the next 3 years? The amount of people who said Vermont, 14.8%. That's a problem for us in trying to stay competitive, to make sure that we are staying top of mind. It's just a very competitive business. So there's a line in the report that says very clearly that Vermont cannot continue to depend on just the idea that people will love Vermont and they will come. We do have to support our brand presence in the marketplace.
Go ahead.
So knowing that, at least
Yes.
at this point in time here, what are you thinking? Have Ron be out front? I see, ads on TV for sure. Right. Lots of things. Other states are doing that as well. New York State has this large thing they've been doing for a long time here. Their output of marketing here for sure. And they're in some different positions.
Yeah.
More of those kinds of things. But what are your first thoughts about?
I mean, so basically we have to make do with what we have.
Right.
That's what we have in front of us. So that's why we spend so much time really thinking about how effective our work is. That's why with this federal money we have, we really concentrate on making investments in, for instance, creative assets that we can continue to use. We have developed new commercials that we haven't put into the market yet. We're basically saving them. So we will continue to be as efficient and effective with the resources that we do have. I just want to make sure that people do understand that it is a competitive marketplace. It costs us the same amount of money to put an ad in Boston as it does to New Hampshire or Maine, who have many, many times more money than we do. And I know that's a longer conversation. But basically, really, for us, it's about being as efficient and targeted as we can.
There's a lot of our local chamber of commerce, which I was there, we're going to have things. Our budget is only so big as well. And we always get lots of offers from like the Boston area that you'd like to become, this in Boston, because we do all these things for you. It's a big price tag here for sure. And so we're always trying to weigh what's the return on that investment, in that level of marketing, which isn't practical for a smaller chamber like that here. But we do support our local businesses. Many of them are outdoor industry, businesses, those different sectors that Tom was asking questions about here as well.
Yeah.
Here, that are local and within a 40-mile radius here. How could our local chambers contribute to something along those lines to increase our visibility, or, prominent individual outdoor industries as well? That's just in my area of the state process.
Yeah. So, one thing that I can sort of talk to is that, one of the things on this list is with federal money, we were able to do some regional grants. We don't have that ability to do that going forward, but, with different levels of funding, and resources, we might be able to do that. But even without that, our place is really at the top of the funnel, right? It's we have that, the ability to reach more people than any local chamber could. So that's sort of the top of the funnel. And then, what we need to do is get folks farther down to get to different communities by telling that story about why they might want to go to one area of the state versus another. Part of that is just making sure that people understand all that Vermont has to offer. We are also very aware of making sure that we are spreading the wealth, so to speak, that we're able to kind of illuminate communities that folks might not be first top of mind. And so then it's really an opportunity for us to make sure that we are continuing to build those relationships with different areas of the state, so that it's really like a top down, bottom up. So it's we can try and get folks to look at what you have, but please help us with, are you investing in photography and making, we have a program right now, we're working with all the downtown organizations to create itineraries. Where should people go in your local area? So basically help us tell your story best. So that's where the local partners can really be most effective, is really helping us understand what makes you special. And then we can try and amplify that.
That's one of those things I don't think we do as much of, or perhaps maybe as well. It talks individual stories. So we kind of assume, people come down to ski and ride bikes and stuff. And those numbers are down for all the reasons been talked about here. We're trying to recapture those folks and they call us.
Yeah. One of the other programs I can point to on this list, the very first one is we just completed a destination management plan. This is a 5 to 10-year plan for the entire industry, not just for our department. Again, this is something we've never been able to do before, but it really outlines a roadmap for how we're going to support the tourism sector going forward. And within that, we have 4 strategic imperatives, and part of the different, there's 16 objectives within that. And a lot of that is thinking about one of the imperatives is how do we strengthen the tourism sector? And a lot of it is how do we think about our relationship with our regional partners? Again, how do we spread folks around? How do we think about year-round visitation? How can we kind of even out the shoulder seasons? That's obviously going to help with workforce. If folks aren't, needing to have 2, 3 jobs and so forth. So there's a lot of things within that plan that we can kind of help start that conversation with different communities. And so as we roll that out, we did a large public engagement process to create the plan, and we're going to be doing a series of roadshows around the state so that folks understand that we're going to be down in the Okemo Valley in a couple of weeks for one of them. And the kinds of things that you're bringing up that you're seeing in your community, we'll be having those conversations, potentially in that area to understand, where can we best collaborate to solve some of these issues.
We have Mike, and then Dave, did you have a question too?
I did, if I
Okay,
could.
yep, you're after Mike.
Okay.
Okay.
A moment ago, you were talking about a little bit about Vermont's marketing capacity, which is maybe why I asked this now, which is I was disappointed that I didn't see anything specific to the 250th anniversary in the budget or any specific asks for that. You had referenced the eclipse, which I think is just an example of how unique things can, that had a $54 million impact in Vermont. I think it was 2009, there was a 400th. I don't exactly know what we were celebrating. 400 years.
I think it's like Champlain. Yeah.
But, the state spent $250,000 on that, and that was in 2009 dollars, and even rolled out a license plate. And there's a piece of me that wonders if we are underserving this 250th celebration. I know the commission still has some of their funds from their original appropriation. So I guess my 2 questions are, first of all, are there any plans for advertising that are embedded in your base budget that are going to be related to the 250th anniversary celebrations throughout the state and the various things throughout the state? Obviously, I'm in Bennington. Bennington's a big one, I know, but there are other locations as well. And I guess second, would you say that I'm overestimating the potential impact of the 250th anniversary, or is the lack of additional funding just a reflection of a difficult budget?
Let me take a couple of those. So I think that, yes, it's a difficult budget year. That's why there isn't, more of an appropriation for Vermont 250. I do sit on the 250 commission, so I'm, well aware of what, folks are trying to plan. I think there is a balance that this often comes up in terms of, we are promoting all the amazing things that are happening in the state, but we're not doing product development. We're not creating those experiences. So, what I understand is that, there are folks like the Vermont Humanities Council and other folks who have been able to provide grant funding to local communities to put on events. And then that's where we come in. So they're figuring out what the events are, and then we can promote it. I will say that we do an annual inspiration guide. That's our printed fulfillment piece that we do in partnership with the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. There's over 200,000 of those that are distributed every year. They're in the welcome centers and so forth. We have a specific multi-page spread on Vermont 250. So we know it's important enough to have that be, a centerpiece for the inspiration guide this year. Will it bring as many people as the eclipse? I can't say that necessarily, but that's one of the reasons why I point to our sort of general work in the winter campaign. So that 145,000 that I was talking about when we were talking about the ROI on that particular paid marketing effort, that's about as many people came for the eclipse. So we can bring eclipse level people here. You know, with the winter campaign, it's not just about one place or one day. You know, that's why we see that amount of visitor spending that's that much greater than the eclipse, because it's a whole season that we're supporting. So I think that's where we just have to kind of be a little bit realistic. We want people to get to Bennington. We will continue to tell that story. We will lift up events that are happening. But I also think that we have a lot of competition, to be honest, when it comes to 250 with our other states. So we are doing what we can. And I think it's a great part of our story, and it's a great reason to come to Vermont this year versus another year. So, you know, it's not just about paid media. Like I say, it's also, you know, it's all of our email marketing and our social media and so forth. But we have lots of different ways that we can lift up different particular stories, whether it's about Vermont 250 or something that might be happening in a different community.
I'm bullish on tourism, and I really believe that if we wanted to infuse some funds into our general fund, this is where to make some investments. Having said that, though, unless I misunderstood you, I don't get too discouraged when I hear that, was it 14.8%? When someone's got 50 choices to make and 1 out of 7 people pick me, that's pretty impressive in my mind. So it's a lot to build on. It's something to build on, and I don't get too discouraged by that personally.
I guess I appreciate your optimism, and I'll take the 14.8% any day. I would be less slightly depressed if Maine's wasn't double ours. Because Maine has a budget 5 times ours and has had for 20 years.
They also have an ocean.
They also have an ocean, but we have competition out there.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say Maine. I remember being in commerce and hearing about the Maine program, which is very impressive. They have some kind of a formula that goes and takes every dollar that that generates income, plows it back into the advertising, and the results were really pretty amazing. I got a couple of quick questions here. I also sat, can't remember his last name, but Ken, the economist who came in and presented a white paper and looked at where the tourism was surging. But what was really important, and I believe you were there and also described it, maybe you can explain this better than I can, but there's ways of knowing where the people come from and how many times they come and when they come on a day trip, and they come for a weekend, and then they stay for a week, and then they buy a house, and then it's all done with credit cards and probably Google Analytics or something, but it's an amazing breakdown. It's a little spooky, but it was very impressive. You really can target it.
We definitely try to access as much data as we can to apply our efforts to the point that we have to be very strategic in what we can do with our resources. I will just point out, if folks want to learn, to your point, we actually were able to do a Vermont visitor survey this year, where we were able to do intercept surveys throughout the state. This was a year-long effort. So we were able to, I'm trying to think, I think it was 66 locations throughout the state and at 27 different events. To do in-person interviews, understand, you know, where did you come from? You know, where did you go? And so we have maps within those reports that shows where people throughout the state, when they came to the state, where did they go? Did they go to one region? Did they go to different regions? Yes, we also do have information on credit card spending. I mean, it's all anonymized, but it does say, you know, what state their home address is in. We use that when we're doing our geo-targeting to make sure where we're spending our dollars, to make sure that we're not only encouraging folks who have been here before to come back again, but like within our ability to look at our direct markets where we have a direct flight, or more aspirational markets where maybe we've seen, you know, a little bit of an uptick in folks coming from that area. And we feel like it's a growth market that we can build on. So we do use data in as many ways as we can to really understand not only who we're talking to, but understanding what they're doing when they come here, so we can, you know, whether that's helping different communities understand that, and again, like spreading people around, or just really understanding what they see in Vermont that they may not be getting elsewhere, so that either we can tell that story better, or to the point of the continuum, if I may, the next slide is about our third bucket, which is really about relocation. So we do know that there's a continuum when folks decide, that they love Vermont and, maybe we can convince them to move here someday. In that visitor survey, we did ask, and this number, I don't have off the top of my head of the amount of people who think they might relocate here, but I think it was around 10%, which I think is actually really quite encouraging. But this is a third major part of the work that we do at the department. So we are looking not just at folks coming here as visitors, but how can we convince them that Vermont is their future for relocation? And then equally, we understand that retention is a big part of that. So when people go through the effort to move their family and come here, we want to make sure that they feel welcome in their community. So we were able to, thanks to base funding that we received a couple of years ago, was really impactful. We've been learning how to do this better and better over the last couple of years. And we were able to launch our Grow Grants program. So we are now in the second, this was a competitive grants program. We had the first phase or cycle was 2 years. We're now starting our second cycle. In that first cycle, we were able to document 200 new Vermonters who came to this program. We will always undercount how many people come because just like visitors don't check in, when they cross the state line, people who move here don't necessarily check in with us either. But the GROW program has helped us really learn that where we're able to be most effective is providing capacity money to local organizations to have those very difficult and detailed one-on-one conversations. So the GROW program will now fund 15 grantees. That includes, now we're able to cover the entire state in terms of where folks are interested in moving to. Plus, we do provide a grant specific to the Vermont Professionals of Color Network and to Open and Out, and I may have that wrong because they're a new grantee to support LGBTQ plus new Vermonters as well as Vermont Professionals of Color for BIPOC Vermonters. So really what that is all about is Think Vermont is just like with visitation, we're top of the funnel. We're trying to make sure that people understand what Vermont has to offer. They have questions. Our call to action on thinkvermont.com is our Connect with a Vermonter form. That's how we really think of this really as a sales funnel. So people raise their hand, we want to move here. We are able to then funnel those leads to the individual regions where they can have those conversations, whether it's about housing, childcare, finding a job, whatever it may be. They're able to provide that level of assistance and really be that sort of shepherd through the process when they do decide to move here. We see from the data, it takes about 4 months for folks to make that transition. It's pretty much equally split between people who have a job offer and then decide to move versus people who decide to move and then look for a job. Have more data on that, but that's another big part of what we do.
Thomas question.
There's a fine line between people coming to visit, wanting to come back, wanting to move here, and buying a second home, which is an issue in some communities. I'm just curious, how does that play with how you're looking at possibly using the loveliness of the state as attracting people? I mean, it's just, there is that thing of where, I'll say Stowe in particular has been, most of the home purchases recently have been for second homes. And what does that do does this play in all your conversations about how does it help us attract people who will want to stay?
Yeah, there have been second owners in Vermont for decades, right? They are a small portion, I would say, of our visitor base. If I think back to that visitor survey, anyway, thinking about the percentage of people said, well, I came and I stayed at my second home. It's with maybe 10%. It's not a huge number of folks. I think that, sometimes people decide that they want to move here right away and they want to go from being a visitor to, I'm going to move here full time. Sometimes they say well, maybe I'd be interested in investing in a property and I might move there, someday in the future, or maybe, I'm not ready to move there, but maybe, my kids might move there one day. I think it depends on the community as to how much that is a, burden on their housing stock versus how much it's bringing in revenue. So it's a fine balance. They think we can do both. Then I guess just to round up, I'm not quite sure how much time we have left, but just finally, I want to mention that there are 2 staff positions within tourism and marketing that make up our chief marketing office. This office has gone through a bit of a transition in the last couple of months. Folks might be aware of the fact that there was a new position created, the chief communications officer within the agency administration. Rebecca Kelly holds that role now. So our two positions that we refer to as the chief marketing officer are now co-located with Rebecca Kelly in the chief communications officer. And that really fits with their mission of those positions, which is really supporting communications and marketing activities throughout state government. So if you think of the rest of the work of the department, we're really very outward facing. Those two positions, with the addition of the chief communications officer, are looking more internally about how to support marketing communications efforts with other state agencies. So you can see here on this slide some of their major initiatives. The top one on the list there is the Universal Digital Accessibility Initiative. Folks may be aware that, under the ADA Act, there's a big deadline coming up in April about how, government entities will need to fulfill their responsibilities with digital accessibility. And so this team is working very carefully with, again, other state agencies and how that they can meet those requirements.
So did this position move? And are you funding it or is it all in AOA now?
Right now, they're just co-located together.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what the best form of collaboration looks like.
It's your employee
Correct.
co-located elsewhere.
Working together, yeah. And then I think the last slide is just our ups and downs, which, again, not much to see here, but I'll let Dan do that.
Yeah, I would just point to, in the federal column, we did have this big EDA grant that allowed the tourism marketing staff to do a lot of really good things. They fully spent down those funds, so the spending authority is falling out in FY27. On the general fund side, no big changes. I think this is really a current services budget. There was, some funding available to push towards just small increases to the marketing efforts. So you see those there, but yeah, by and large, it's pretty much strictly current services.
How much is the original EDA grant?
10.4 million.
That was nice.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that slide, that's like, you look at like each bullet by bullet is like, that's a major thing. That's an amazing major thing. That's an amazing major thing. I mean, there's workforce development work that we were able to do. There were, we were able to provide some funding to state parks to work on their fire towers. There's like so many different things that we were able to do.
Yeah.
Which was hopefully not once in a lifetime, but it's very welcome. To prove what we can do with resources.
Well, thank you. And it's always nice to hear from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Thank you for giving us so much time. Tom has economic development and tourism. TIF has housing.
So I'll
we have
check in.
contracts.
I'll come around again for a second round of conversation.
And if we have questions about, we'll go to Tom.
I mean, it sounds like it's about as pro forma as it's ever been, right? There's not very many.
Just the three.
Yeah, so, but I'll check, I'll be back.
Base funding for VHIP, we're on the same team here. Economic Development Office in Montreal.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, so Heather, so on the, I was just struck by your comments about how, people aren't, the feeling is through all the data that people aren't just gonna come here because we're such a cool place to come. And yet I can see scattered, I mean, there's not one place, and maybe there should be, or maybe there is, but there's a cheese tour, there's a beer tour, there's tours that each individual place. How would you go about like pitching the larger picture of like, no, really, look how cool we are. Like, I mean, because I think each of these you can go biking in the kingdom, you can go to the cheese places, you can go to the beer, whatever it is that people are doing. And then I work in a place where there's a lot of bus tours that people are coming from Pennsylvania and New York State, and they're, staying at traps and taking the bus and coming here for, a sandwich and soup and a tour. So what's percolating in your mind in terms of what is it that we would do as a state? I mean, there's 100 different things that we can do, but where are you going with, how do we get people to come?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts of it. So one is like, what is the story that we're telling, right? So what is going to be compelling to people? And so that's where, we definitely do a lot of research and like, what is the competitive set? Like, what can we offer that somebody else can't offer? So part of that is then we're investing in whether it's, like I mentioned, itineraries or, ideas for what people can do. And then it's like telling that story. Like, do we have the right video assets to do that? Are they like long form that we can show, as YouTube pre-roll? Are they like shorts that we put on, social media? Like there's lots of different development opportunities for us to tell that story once we know, as we we're talking about, like on the local level, what is the best story for us to tell. And then it's really like the other side of that is we can create all these wonderful stories and assets about what we have to offer, but we need to get it to people. And that's the resource constraint that is difficult for us, is like, how many people can we reach? We know it's a competitive environment. We know it takes multiple touch points to really activate someone to do any kind of behavior change, whether that's come to a place or stop smoking or whatever it is, just, basic communications. So it's really about both. It's like, how do we hone in on, that brand study talked a lot about, yes, people come here because it's a beautiful place. They also come here because they feel safe. That's something where we rank very high.
Cool.
But yes, in all sorts of different studies, right? It's kind of like the Venn diagram for the economic impact, like there's so many different studies. But it's just, so it's really, so how do we use those brand assets in the most impactful way that people really understand what it is they're quote unquote buying when we say, spend your precious free time with your friends and family here in Vermont. So I think it's both.
Need to spend money to make money.
It's an investment.
Pardon?
It's an investment.
Yeah.
Invest money to make money is what you're saying.
Yes.
Have you ever heard that one?
Well, thank you for the time. And thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of
Thank
you
you.
coming and great to see you.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
Yeah.
Putting up with
Vice
it.
versa.
A little-
So committee, this is our last set of testimony for today. Tomorrow, we have different hours of the day. In the morning, we've got the state sheriffs and attorneys, sheriffs, and then BGS. And I'm asking Autumn to shift BGS a little bit later so we get a break in between the two of them. That's important. And then at 1:45, we have the first public hearing joint in room 11 with Senate appropriations. So we will have tomorrow, 1:45 to 3:15 approximately. So that will be the afternoon. And you will get sheets from Autumn about who's coming, so you can all take notes on what you're hearing in the public hearing, who's coming. So usually what we've done is we run the first public hearing and then we let Senate vote.
The next week, you mean?
Yeah, 5-6:30 on Thursday night, so remember that for your travel and your plans, and if you want to stay overnight, if you don't know. But that's room 11. That's room 11. We both room 11. I have been promised by Autumn that we have. Yeah, good.
Oh.
One year we had to do it. Both committees were in here for some reason. It was like, some bizarre, anyway, not ideal. So that's what it looks like. I sent you the email with the carry forward reports. There's already, I'm texting some of you saying, what about this? So, but you'll all check it out yourself as well. So you'll have time tomorrow also after we're done with BGS to keep doing your budget work. I know that there's meetings that are happening between different people around. So we're trying to build in some free time. But time for you to be able to do that budget work. So that's what I got. Okay, yes, Mike.
Just wanted to share a quick comment. The narrative that I'm seeing unfold here, got just about every group that's come in here saying we're facing a really tough budget, it's tough out there. Outside the building, I'm talking to people and they're just treading water. It's tough out there.
Yeah.
And then there's this cognitive dissonance because I'm hearing the news every week from the White House that we've got the best economy in the history of the world. At some point, I think people are waking up.
Yeah.
To see, maybe it's good for the people up here, but the rest of us
Price of eggs is still
are treading
pretty high.
water.
Yeah.
And, very true. It's tough out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think we will be starting to see, continuing to see how hard a budget year this is gonna be. And I think people in the building are understanding that now, which is the first start, the first step. So one of the things I also, which reminds me, because we're gonna hear people asking for money again. I don't think we're gonna get the same numbers that we got last year, because I think they do understand that, but even cutting it back a little bit is still gonna be more than we're gonna be able to do. But I will send you the link. Our congressional delegation got a lot of money in congressionally directed spending, earmarks, which we are not using. And they have some really good stuff in there that they're doing, and I think some of that may help offset requests that we're gonna hear. So we really gotta know what's in there. I'm seeing some really interesting things that they're doing in healthcare for seniors, for other housing, and, you know, so we should understand that in the context of what we're doing.
And how those funds
Yeah.
can get distributed.
Right.
But who are the funnels that will?
Right, and
send
it's-
that out?
Right, so, I have the link somewhere on one of my 5,000 open tabs, and I'll forward it to you guys, so you can take a look at it too, but.
Do we have any kind of liaison between us and that delegation?
Oh, we can contact the delegation at any point in time, I mean, yeah, we can check in with them
Might be a good thing.
easily to just
Yeah.
have them talk about.
Yeah.
That might be a great thing to have them come in and
Helpful for us to know.
talk to us, yeah,
Understand.
yeah, so.
Sure.
Congresswoman Ballin, in the House, you have a maximum of 15 designations that you can do, and she got all 15 of hers. So she did as much as she could, and if hers looks less than the other guys, it's because she's in the House, not the Senate. And the Senate, they seem to have done quite a bit of stuff, so I'm optimistic that can help us this year. I don't know how yet, I haven't followed all the dots, and Nolan is also is doing work, speaking of connecting dots, 195 million rural health transformation versus what people are cutting in the budget. He's gonna do a little work to see, are these things that they're trying to cut, actually, are we covering them somewhere else, or are they just true cuts that we can't, you know? Because I don't know about you, but I'm hearing from people, including legislators in the building, saying, like, who they're gonna cut this thing, and I don't want you to do that, so we're gonna get a lot of that.
I know.
Oh, see that.
Yeah, well, we don't usually cut things to the extent that we are. And yes, we have to do it, but just know that we're hearing that, right?
Just one more question. Everybody else hear that music?
Yeah, I wonder.
I know, Marty and I
Worried that I'm the only one, yeah.
5 minutes ago, it started with a heart, but not on,
I want to thank all of us.
Music, Mike.